I mean, it's one of the worst places to actually be a journalist. And that is not only because of the threat of cartels, but also to the involvement of the Mexican government working with the cartels, passing along information to criminal organizations, but also surveilling and intimidating journalists themselves. I mean, from the official government.
And Luis, in a related story, Mexico has filed another lawsuit against 5 U.S.-based firearm dealers, all of them in Arizona, they claim are responsible for fueling the flow of illegal weapons and a surge in murders in Mexico. Could you talk about that lawsuit and the one that preceded it?
Definitely. So this is the second attempt by Mexican government to sue first the U.S. government to no avail, and then some private companies selling or allegedly selling guns to drug cartels. The first attempt to do this was thrown down by a U.S. federal judge. And this is the second attempt, and the Mexican government is now going after just a few companies, particularly in Arizona, where most of the guns used by Mexican drug cartels are coming from. These sue, to my understanding, has very little opportunities to actually go through as the first one. First of all, because the U.S. Gun manufacturers have a huge set of resources or legal resources to fight against a sue like this one. And second of all, because I think the target or the goal to these sue is actually to just pay attention to what the U.S. manufacturers are doing, and not only the responsibility of the U.S. government in all the violence currently happening in Mexico, but also to bring light to the responsibility on private companies on this issue. Documents and investigations that I've seen show that 80% of the guns traced back to the U.S. are coming from shops in Arizona, which is a major corridor for most of the top cartels in Mexico, like the Sinaloa cartel and the Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación.
We have to leave it there, Luis, but we're going to continue our conversation in a post-show. Also, you followed a bus from El Paso of migrants sent to New York. We want to talk about that, and we'll do an interview in Spanish, and we will post it online. By the way, on our website, you can also see our headlines, read them, and listen to them in Spanish at democracynow.org. Luis Chaparro, we want to thank you so much for your participation. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Stay safe.
Buffalo's a
I still don't know how to use the technology. So we have our director of our IT, Willie H., who does the live streaming of the program. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan here. Yeah, y'all checking us out at 91.3 FM. Also, welcome viewers from WBNY Facebook, from YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
And much love to our producer who can be with us, for this morning. but much love to him. We always keep everybody in our thoughts, and he's the core of our team. But before I get into today's subject, I just want to remind us again that we'd like to introduce the broadcast by placing a call out to all of us to provide whatever help we can for our fellow citizens in Florida and the Carolinas who are still facing tremendous hardships due to the impacts of Hurricane Ian. One place where you can offer your support is by contacting the Support Coalition of the Red Cross and other self-help organizations online at ianresponse.org. Ian is IAN, then response, RESPONSE.org. ianresponse.org. Let's work together to help out or help Florida put communities back together by volunteering your time and or sending needed money, again, online at ianresponse.org. 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 I wanted to take today's program, and initially I want to talk about what I think is a potential catastrophe facing our country. You know, when you have a and Willie, you know this. You know, when you have like a little sore someplace,
Right.
and you know today it's a little sore, tomorrow morning it's a bigger sore.
Right.
That's the sign that you should go do something about it right then and there.
Probably go to the doctor
Go
or
see somebody,
use some
right?
medicine or something.
Put some salve on it.
Something, yeah.
Leach it, you know, do something to it, right?
Right.
But you can't just stand there and say, oh, it'll go away by itself.
That's correct.
Well, we have a sore in our society.
Wow.
We have people who felt that Donald Trump, because they just liked him, should have been 20.
Right.
And because they felt so strongly about that, they've been doing things to try to make his failure to get elected stand up to be elected.
Right.
Right. So now they got election deniers.
Mm-hmm.
They got election denier clubs. You know, they're meeting, you know, at the hunting lodge, you know, in the blinds, you know, out in the woods and whatnot, right? Putting together their game plan on how they're going to overturn the November 20 election. Now, I'm not too much concerned about their ability to actually overturn the 2020 election. What I am concerned about is their statements that if they don't win an election, you know, or the person who they want does not win an election, that means that the election was fraudulent and they will not accept the results of the election. So they're saying the same thing their homeboy Donald Trump is saying.
Right.
If I don't win, then it must be corrupt.
Mm.
The only way the election can be legitimate is if I win.
Right.
What kind of nonsense is that?
Well, yeah. They want to win and they do anything to win.
And so what is happening now is a network of these people have come together, and they've got people with money and intelligence,
right,
who are working out strategies among them so that they can prevent future elections going in a direction that they don't want that election.
That's correct, because they know they're becoming a minority. So they got to put in place a system that will keep them to have the privilege, the power, the control over everybody else.
Right. So we've repeatedly talked about these election deniers that threaten the success of the 2024 election. That's what I want us to be focused on.
Right.
They keep telling us that what's going on, its relationship to the 2024 election. I'm telling you that these people are doing what I call misdirection. They're showing you a shiny object over here, the 2024 presidential election, but in their other hand is the real club that they have in their hand. That club is the club that will help them to disrupt, dislodge, disable the 2022 elections that are coming up in 5 weeks.
Yeah.
In 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Pundits are treating these tactics of these election deniers as though they were some kind of an irritant, you know, just something on the fringe. It gets on your nerves. But these people may claim as many as 600 offices that control elections in the United States and who appoint election officials within each state. You have to understand that if you have a Secretary of State who is the final arbiter of what the election law means in a particular state, that same person also appoints the people who had the committees for the counties, where the county boards of election,
Right.
they are the central administrator of the county boards of election around your country.
Right.
Right. And then those county boards of election, they appoint people to run their polling places. Right.
Correct.
So they people that are in their offices that take in your voter registrations, So what if the persons who are taking in your voter registrations, you come in, fill out your voter registration card, and they say, great, go away, and then they throw your stuff in the garbage.
Wow.
What if they change what they put on the?
Hold on, Mr. Hare. Are you saying people can't fill out and then put them in the machines like they normally do?
You could, but you could be in a place where you just fill it out by hand.
And they say, we'll take care of it.
And we got you, brother. We got you.
I see.
See? But when they say we got you, they really mean we got you, but not the way you think that they got you, okay? This is what we have. I mean, these people are saying that they will do what is flatly unconstitutional,
right.
flatly illegal, right? But they're so certain that they'll get away with it, that the worst that'll happen is that somebody will spank them on the hand and say, naughty, you shouldn't do that anymore.
Well, when you got almost 50% of the country wanting to keep that, you got those people, Republicans, conservative, whoever, and then you got almost 50% of the country wanting to keep it like that for whatever reason, whether it's true or not, they want to keep it. So they'll do anything.
So what I keep saying is that we focus a lot on the tree and miss the forest, if that makes sense, right?
Okay.
You got millions of trees in the forest.
Right.
You got one tree in front of you.
Right.
Now you could walk around that tree, right? You don't have to stand there and try to, I'm going to overcome this tree, right? You can just walk around the tree, right? And deal with the fact that you're in the middle of a forest of 1 million trees, and you got to get through that entire forest, not just around that one tree, right? But that's what's happening right now. They get us focused on, Donald Trump, is saying crazy things, and people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, saying, outrageously stupid and racist and classist and misogynist, kinds of things. We get focused on that, but we miss the forest. The forest is, you've got election apparatuses in 50 states and in 6 territories around the country. The forest is, you have people who can, on their own, change how they interpret election law. And if nobody challenges them, those changes stand up.
Right.
You can't trust the Supreme Court to back you up, because Supreme Court has already shown you in living colors that rights that you think you have, if they don't think you should have those rights, you don't get those rights.
Wow.
I mean, they've already taken away the right of women to be able, it's a right of everybody, but the only person who it affects is women. Right. It takes away their right to decide for themselves what they're going to do with their body. That's been a right for almost 50 years in this country. The Supreme Court said, well, I don't care if it's a right. I don't care if there's precedent. I don't care if the Supreme Court decided this that way. We don't like it. So we're just going to change, that construction. So you can't trust. This is the same Supreme Court that said that the illegally gerrymandered maps in Alabama that deny African people the right to at least have the opportunity to elect a second congressperson from the state of Alabama, that was backed up by the Supreme Court. They said, well, we know that it hurt people from, the African race, but we say that it was more political than it was racial. And since it was more political than it was racial, we say it's okay. You can gerrymander for political purposes, even if you can't gerrymander for racial purposes. Even though you're hiding, gerrymandering for racial purposes, you're hiding that under your gerrymandering for political purposes. This is the craziness that is going on right now. The 538 organization is a polling organization. They do polls. They don't just study preferences of people around the country for various things that they research on, but they also look at how those people regard the democracy itself. We are in a position today where there are literally tens of millions of Americans who are willing to vote for people who will actually erode, if not outright disrupt, to overturn democracy,
Right.
in this country. Now, for those that don't know what democracy is all about, I know some of us are young and didn't
you
fight.
might need to explain that.
Didn't fight in the Revolutionary War. Don't know what this is all about, right? But that this democracy is based on the ideation that every human being is equal, that we're all equal under our Creator with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, all the things that append, to the rights of an individual in this country. And because of that, every individual has a right to vote, and every vote has to have the same value. So if I vote and my vote counts for one, you vote, your vote counts for one. You can't vote and your vote counts for two, and I vote for one and my vote counts for a half a vote. It can't go like that, right? I mean, if it's a democracy, it has to be one person, one vote. But what these people are attempting to do is to put their thumb on the scale and prevent people from being able, people that they think will not vote like they want them to vote, to prevent them from voting. Their view is, we'll just stop you from registering to vote altogether.
Right.
And if you somehow get to register, we'll prevent you from being able to cast your vote, because we'll close up all of the polling places.
Right.
And if that isn't enough, we'll close up all of the drop boxes.
And you also know what's going on the internet, social media, is that big time they are asking for monies and for you to be committed to them big time on both sides, Democrat and Republican.
They are, but with the Democrats, they have issues. Let's not act like Democrats don't have issues.
Right.
But their issues don't tend to be taking away your right to be able to participate in the democracy.
Right.
Their issues have to do with whoever it is that they're trying to advocate for. I got friends in the medical industry, that are union workers. I need for them to get a lot more money, per hour than they're getting right now, and a lot more days off, which, I guess that's a good thing. But the point I'm making is those are the kinds of issues that Democrats tend to be lined up for. Republicans tend to be lined up on issues that say that if it's not us, then it can't be anybody. We have to get all, not some. We just got to get all. And if we have to prevent you from being able to exercise your rights as a citizen, your ability to participate as a citizen, we are going to do that. We're going to do everything in our power to prevent you from succeeding, so that we can succeed. Right. That's their thing. So the 538 organization, studying all of the elections that are coming up this year in this year's midterms, found that out of 552 total Republican nominees running for office, it's not all the offices that are up to bat, but for the ones that Republicans are running in, 552 of these offices, they found of them, 200 were nominees who have publicly expressed that the election in November of 2020 was a fraud.
Wow.
Now, you're running for a elected office in the United States, and you're running around here saying that an election that was declared to be the cleanest election in the history of the United States, you're running around saying that election was a fraud. So what does that tell us that you're going to do if you're that person when you get in office?
Exactly. You're going to do whatever it takes to get your agenda.
You'll join the cabal, doing things to frustrate democracy, to find ways to bias things, for your view. The election apparatus has to be virtually nonpartisan in order for it to work. My first wife started doing that work in 1977, and she still does election day, work for pennies. I mean, I think she gets like something like $75 a day, for doing that.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure she was making pretty close to $400 a day when she retired. So that's a lot of sacrifice, on her part.
Right.
But she loved doing it. She felt like she was a part of the democracy. That's what she would say.
Right.
She would say that, she felt like she was a part of delivering democracy, to the country.
Part of a system that will eventually be fair to everybody.
Yep. So 200 out of 552 of these Republican nominees outright denied that the election in November was a valid election at all.
Right.
Then you have another 62 of those candidates, Republican candidates, who said that they found the results. They found the results troubling, but they wouldn't say whether they thought the election, was valid or not.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where their heart was, right? Then there's another 122 nominees, again, all Republicans, who wouldn't say one way or the other what they believed. But what was most disturbing to the 538 study was with regard to the midterm election forecast for this year. They said that they could see that 118 election deniers and 7 election doubters have a 95% chance of winning the office that they're running for.
Wow.
So that means if this goes like this, you're going to have at least 200 of the 550 or so Republicans, that have been nominated for an office around the country. You're going to have at least 200 of them being people that outright deny that the November election was valid, and are probably people that will be supporting doing things that would suppress the votes of populations
That's correct.
who they think should not vote. When I say suppressing the vote for populations, Donald Trump claimed that, he was cheated out of the election, but he didn't say that the cheating took place in all 50 states and the 6 territories.
Mm-hmm.
They took place in Philadelphia, the cheating. It took place in Atlanta. You see the places I'm talking about, right?
Places that probably wasn't for him.
Detroit, and so on, right? So why are these people? These are places where 60 to 80% of the vote are African people, and they don't vote for people like Donald Trump, right? So he wants those votes to be tested,
right?
So he had 61 different lawsuits filed trying to get the votes in those areas overturned. They lost all but one of those cases. And the one case they didn't win was because it was a process case. It wasn't a factual case. And they just determined that the people that were the plaintiffs didn't have standing. Standing means that you have to be injured by something in order for you to go to court and ask for redress. If you're not being injured, you can't ask for redress. You got to go find the person that was injured, right, and they're the ones that have to ask for redress. You can't ask for redress for somebody else, right? So this is the situation that we have in front of us. We have an election if you have an election denying Secretary of State, that person could refuse to certify an election that he or she believes was rigged. An election denying governor could attempt to submit electoral votes that defy the will of the people. The election denying senators and representatives could vote to count those electoral votes on their own and just say what the results were for that state. The 2022 election will determine how many of these candidates get their chance. Even if only a third of these people are successful, that would still be 160, 170 offices around the country that are being held by people who have already said that they're going to do everything in their power to defeat democracy and erect autocracy, because they're not going to let the will of the people be expressed and become certified. If they don't like whoever it is that wins an election, they're simply going to cheat and say, you didn't win. We won. How do we know we won? Because I'm here.
Wow.
Because I'm in the position to say, we won. That means we won. That's what's going to be going on. There are many among these election deniers who have asserted that if their candidate doesn't win an election, that there must have been election fraud. Rules and laws have already been passed in several states that would enable political groups who have control of both state legislatures and the governorship literally can set aside the elections that they don't like and simply take a vote among the members of the 2 state legislatures and use those results for the election. And what do I mean by that? Most states have, some states have different names, but every state has 2 houses. One that's more of a local office, like what we call our state assembly, and another that is more regional, the state senate. And collectively, what they're saying is if these places where you have a Republican in control of the assembly and in control of the Senate, and also in control of the governorship. And the reason why the control of the governorship is important is because the state legislature can only pass laws. They can't execute the laws. Only the governor, for state purposes, can execute laws. So the state legislatures vote for something, they have to send that to the governor, and the governor gets a chance to sign or not sign that legislation. Now, if the governor chooses not to sign the legislation or vetoes the legislation, the state assemblies in both houses can vote, I believe, a 66% roughly a majority. They can vote to overturn the veto of the governor. But the point that I'm trying to make is that democracy is under attack right now. It's not under attack in 2024. It's not under attack from some foreign enemies, the Russians, the Chinese, whoever it is that you are allowing people to construct, to construct inside your head. The democracy is under attack from other Americans who don't like democracy unless democracy works for them. Now, who is the them that they want democracy to work for, and who are the thems they want the democracy to work against? That's important for us to understand what's going on here. We have a humongous chunk of Americans who feel that America is transforming into being a different, fundamentally different kind of country than the country that, mom and dad and granddad and great granddad and great 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 granddad, that they all remember.
Right.
The 1776 or 1781 America. That's what they ideate on.
Right.
And what they feel is that America is transforming.
It is. They know
from being that America.
It is.
To being one where the majority, like in California. In California today, all the people, if you count up demographically, all of the people that call themselves white versus the people that call themselves black or call themselves Hispanic or call themselves, Asian, if you add up all those populations, you will find that the white population is no longer the majority population in the state of California.
That's correct.
It's more like 47% of the state of California. And that percentage is going down every year.
Right. Now,
you probably didn't notice this, because they wouldn't tell you this outright, but the lights still work in California. The swimming pools open up on time. The streetcars run, on time.
Right.
Everything that makes the country work still works.
Still working.
Even though white folks aren't the majority in California. So you have a laboratory that proves to you that the country would work regardless of whether you're the majority, the minority, the biggest minority, whatever kind of way you want to, categorize how you're counting people.
Right.
At the end of the day, the country works because these are all smart people.
And the minority, which is white there, is not really losing anything.
Right. I mean, nothing's going to change.
Right.
What's going to change in New York State? If New York State became a 55% minority, whatever that means, and a 45%, Caucasian state, what would change in the state? I mean, you still have the same, gun laws. You'd still have the same traffic laws. You'd still have the same power company issues. All these things would be the same. So what's the resistance here? What's all of the animus about? What's all of the fear and the anger? What's that about?
Well, somebody's creating a fear too.
Exactly.
People in position power.
Because it's easy for you to focus people on an outsider and other. And if you can categorize people or cast them in the role of being the other, and then blame the problems in your society on that other, it's much easier for you to be able to get people stimulated. They'll react to that. If the other is something amorphous, like, man, in the whole world, the supply shortages are causing inflation across the world. People don't really react, all that well to that issue. So it's important for us to understand that democracy itself is under attack. Not tomorrow, it's under attack right now. From my point of view, if a person says to you that I don't believe that the November election was a valid election, if a person says to you that I think that we should limit the amount of access that people have to registering to vote or being able to cast their votes and so on. If a person tells you that that's where they're coming from, you should not vote for that person. Even though that person might be your brother, your sister, your cousin, your father, your mother, your crew, they may be all of that. You may love that person, but that person is threatening your ability to be able to live in a real democracy. And you can't allow that person to wield that kind of power. You got to get other players,
Right.
To the dance. So I know we only had a little bit of time, to work on this. I just wanted us to start to get our mind wrapped around this. Here, this is a litmus test that you should apply to everybody. Either you believe in democracy or you don't. If you believe in democracy, when the votes are cast, you count the votes, and whatever happens, happens. If the people that you wanted to win didn't win, then organize for the next time that office comes up for election, organize to be able to get people to run for that office that are going to be more effective in doing what you want to see done. But don't destroy democracy, because Donald Trump somehow seems sexy to you. Getting off the
Donald Trump seems sexy to
I don't get it. He was on a bus. You hear people talking on the bus that he's saying that, I'm a star. And because I'm a star, I can stick my tongue down.
He's a celebrity.
He's a celebrity and so
okay.
on. And he just talks so crudely about people. He grabs a woman, in her private parts, and so on. As Donald Trump has made the big lie a litmus test for Republican candidates in the midterms, they are planning to swarm battleground states with thousands of poll watchers charged with rooting out alleged voter fraud, which is essentially a code for authorizing intimidation. Because that's the other thing that these folks are doing is they're using their organizational power to intimidate voters. They're actually chasing people from election offices and intimidating them. They're shouting at them through horns. They're putting up posters and so on, flags, and shouting at these people. And so they're calling people at home, bothering people, in their homes and whatnot, because they're doing the work of democracy, running an election, right? And so those are the kind of people that we need to defeat. Okay, I know we have a caller hanging on. Let me grab that call real quick. Right. Hi, caller, are you there?
Yes, sir. Always good information. My question for you is, what would it take, or is it possible to create some sort of voting rights for all, universal voting? If you're 18 and, there's no reason to exclude you, everybody has the right to vote. To do that kind of campaign, because that seems to be, if we can get more people voting, it seems that would prevent a lot of the intention that those who want to restrict the voting.
I think that's good. Good counsel. That's a good initiative. Some countries, when you're born, they put you on the clock.
Yes, sir.
When your date of birth turns into 18 years on the planet, you don't have to go vote. They automatically turn you on. It's like they dial something on your body and whatnot, and you turn into a voter, right? You're automatically a registered voter. And some countries, as the caller is speaking to, they actually have institutionalized their democracy so that you have an apparatus that runs across the country. It's the same apparatus, and it runs the democracy across the country.
Right.
It does the registration, the validations, it verifies that people still live wherever they say that they live. It counts the votes, it makes sure that there's no mistakes in votes. If there's a mistake or there's a hanging chad or something like that, they're the ones who actually go and investigate and make a determination as to what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. They institutionalize it so that you would have a nonpartisan body of people whose sole job is just to run the election. They don't care who wins the election. They just run the election. They judge themselves by what percentage of people actually vote.
Well, Mr. Hare and Mr. Kamal, I think I think that's what they're trying to do, because they know that more voters probably will be young, they will vote, and that's why they're trying to do anything to restrict. because they know those new voters are coming on board.
And historically, the more people you have voting as a percentage of the population, the more people-friendly outcomes of legislation tends to be.
Right.
You know, so I agree. I think that's a great suggestion. That's something we need to start working on. So I'm making a note of that now, and I'm see if I can get people to buy into that idea. I think it's a great idea.
Keep on bringing the good information, sir.
All right, thanks, brother.
Thank you, sir.
Share the research. Share the research.
Thank you.
Share the research.
So listen, I think we're near our half hour. So we have to take care of our sponsors. So if you all stick with us, don't go away. We will see you on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY.
You guys are listening to Living for the People with L. Nathan here on 91.3 FM WBNY.
Radio that's challenging, innovative, and encouraging. Tune in, Living for the People.
This is L. Nathan Hare. Join me right here, 91.3 FM WBNY. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 a.m. after Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! We'll provide objective analysis regarding current issues. Call 878-5104. It's Living for the People on 91.3 FM WBNY. All right, welcome back to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan here. Welcome you again to our broadcast. We were talking a bit about these election deniers and the impact on the 2022, this year's elections. We need to understand that the people that get voted into offices where they have some role in the delivery of democracy at the local and state levels, if those people are people that are willing to manipulate the democracy in order for them to be able to get the outcomes that they want, that's not just going to affect life in November of 2022. How we vote in 2024 is going to be prejudiced by who the people are that get voted into office in 2022. And what I'm suggesting to us is that we should look with what they say, askance, with a jaundiced eye against those people that are actually telling you that they're willing to destroy democracy in order for them to get what they want out of the democracy. Now, I wanted to get into another subject today. Before we go, this was an article that appeared in Politico that the United States has leverage over Saudi Arabia, and it's about time we use it. Why is this important? As you know, we talked about this last Friday, that the Saudis have made a decision, because they're the central players in the OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries.
Right.
They're pushing to have the OPEC countries reduce their oil production by 2 million barrels of oil a day. Now, so you understand, the United States goes through about 14 million barrels of oil a day as just one country.
Wow.
So
just us.
If you lose 2 million, barrels of oil that's available, for purchase, that's going to put a squeeze on people who need oil.
Mm-hmm.
When you lower the supply, but demand is still high, the price that you charge for the supply goes up.
Right, that's what they want.
And that's what they said. They said that we wanted to keep oil at around $90 or so a barrel. And at that price point, we're going to get enough profit for us to be able to balance our budget.
Right.
And that's what they're really trying to do. That's what they said. They're trying to balance their own budget. So the problem is that we're a part of a world community. Our oil prices are actually set by OPEC.
Mm-hmm.
So our oil prices in the United States for the oil that we produce here, and keep in mind, the United States is actually a net exporter of oil. We we actually export more oil than we
Mr. Hare,
we use.
do you know how much we export? How much in dollars?
It's,
Or
I don't know what it is in dollars, but it's somewhere in the area of 3 million barrels of oil a day
3 million
that we export to other countries.
So we make some money off of that.
We make good money. Good money. You multiply that times $90 a barrel, and you're talking about 3 million barrels a day. That's really big money. That's not punk money. That's really big money. Right. Okay. So it's important for us to understand these relationships.
Right.
So now the issue becomes, what do we do if Saudi Arabia is trying to use their muscle, because they control about 40% of the oil that's produced by the OPEC countries. So they're the biggest individual provider of oil within that cartel. So if they're willing to use their economic power to benefit themselves at the expense of the rest of the world, well, what can the rest of the world do about it? So that's what this article is focused on. It says deciding to, we talked about the 2 million barrels a day cut. The shocking move will worsen global inflation, undermine successful efforts in the United States to bring down the price of gasoline, and it will also help Vladimir Putin's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, because Putin is being able to sell less oil on the market because people are what's the word? They're sanctioning, his ability to be able to sell oil to people. And so as a consequence, he's not getting as much money as he was getting before. But if you cause the price of oil to increase, then the price of the revenue that he gets from selling oil increases, and that helps him to be able to balance his budget. So it's really helping Russia. So the Saudi decision was a pointed blow to the United States, but the U.S. Can promptly pause the massive transfer of American warfare technology into the eager hands of the Saudis. Simply put, America shouldn't be providing such unlimited control of strategic defense systems to an apparent ally of our greatest enemy. Think about this now, because we have to understand that no matter what Americans say, at the end of all of the trees that are being shaken, there's money in those trees.
Right.
And so the American arms producing industry, the Dow Chemicals and the I forget the names of all of these different, General Motors,
company, right?
All these big companies that produce war goods. They produce tanks and guns and missiles and all of that sort of stuff. Those people have to sell that stuff to somebody.
Right.
And if you're not at war, you're making all these, military, supplies. But what happens if you don't have a war going on to consume the supplies? You're not going to just keep stockpiling more and more and more.
So, Mr. Hare, what you're saying is that war is something that is possibly controlled. They want war.
So, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Wow.
That's what I'm saying. They need war. They need some kind of war going on, because if you don't, then the people that make the munitions, that make the tanks, that make the planes, that make the missiles and the mortars and so on, once you're all stocked up and you got as much as you can store, then what do they do with their production capacity? They're not going to keep making more stuff that they can't sell.
Let me ask this question. Do we sell any war products or any to the Russians?
No.
Okay.
The Russians are their own predators. So
Okay.
so they're fellow vultures, the vultures are the ones that eat the carrion, the people laying on the ground. We're the people laying on the ground, and the Russians are vultures and America are vultures.
But possibly they maybe sell some to Ukraine. I know they're giving them some, but
well, for sure. I mean, the Ukrainians were getting their weapons from Russia when Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union.
So now we are new.
So you figure initially when the Ukrainian war started, they were using their own equipment, but because they couldn't replace that stuff, they started getting NATO equipment. Most of that equipment is American made equipment.
We sell to NATO.
Right.
So American making money.
But I need for you to understand the other part of the hook. So you got that part of it. The Americans are making money off of selling military hardware and so on.
Okay.
That's all correct.
Right.
What we have to understand is, where does the money come from to pay for this stuff? The foreign aid that we give to, say, Sudan or Chad, or Angola, or Nicaragua or Ecuador, whoever we're giving foreign aid to, the vast majority of that foreign aid goes into propping up the militaries in those countries. And those are countries that are engaged in some kind of warfare with somebody on their turf.
Okay.
So they're using up those military goods, which then have to be replaced. So that if you're buying the goods from American, war companies, this creates a market for them to be able to sell their goods and then get have a market for future sales, for future sales of goods.
The older I get, the more I realize that the world system is got a lot of evil going on.
Well, the world is really round. I know they told you the world was flat, okay? And I know you bought that because you on your bicycle, you ride 40 miles and you don't fall off. You said,
Right.
well, but the reality is the world is round, and what goes around comes around. Okay,
Yeah.
so we really have to grapple with this reality. So the United States is, as a nation, it's helping nations to supposedly stabilize themselves by getting foreign aid from the United States to prop up or help the economy of those countries. But the reality is, those dollars are going into countries that are involved in conflicts, and the United States is taking taxpayer dollars. That's the part I wanted to get to. Taking taxpayer dollars and using those
our money,
wow, our general money, right? Something like $1.8 trillion, a year. No, I'm sorry, I think I said that wrong. It might be more like,
that's a lot of money.
it may be more like $17 trillion in American.
Right.
That's not the dollars. That's the GDP, or close to the GDP. Americans' tax dollars are in that 1.7, $1.9 trillion range.
So, Mr. Hare, would you say I'm giving away possibly $1,000 a year? And
well, depending on how much money you make, you being a fat cat making $200,000 a year, you're probably putting about $20,000 a year into the pockets of the weapons manufacturing companies of the United States.
Unbelievable.
Because remember, when the United States has given $13 billion to the Ukrainians to fight their war, where does the $13 billion come from? The United States doesn't make anything.
Right.
We don't market anything. We don't have some gold bullion that we're cashing in someplace, to be able to get this money. That money comes out of U.S. tax dollars.
Right.
So they're taking your money and using your money to buy weapons for Ukraine to fight its war against Russia. Now, don't get me wrong. I agree that we should be helping the Ukraine. Okay?
I agree.
That's not my issue. I'm just trying to help us to understand what the dynamics are, how these things interrelate with each other, so that from a policy perspective, we orient our policies around what's really in the best interest of the United States, not what's in the best interest of some predatory, companies that manufacture weapons goods, right? So, go ahead.
For most of our Americans, that's why your voice need to be heard, because you need to know that your money is going towards something. So you want to make sure that your money is at least going to something that
you want.
Yes.
Now think about this. We've been selling these advanced weapon systems to the Saudi Arabians. When's the last time you saw Saudi Arabia go into war, to preserve democracy someplace in the world, to save somebody's neck, who's being crushed, by, some predatory country? For example, Somalia. It's barely a country, it's just a piece of geography on the map. I don't think they even have a real government, in Somalia.
How many people you say?
It's probably probably Somalia. So it's a small place, but they do have oil. So they put you on the map because you have oil, but the oil business doesn't do anything for the people as a whole. What you got are these oligarchs, in Somalia. They have control of the oil companies. So all of the profits that they get out of selling their oil goes into the hands of those oligarchs.
Right.
The rest of the population in Somalia,
Suffer.
they're just dirt poor, right? Because they don't grow anything, they don't make anything.
Basically servants when they need them.
Yep, when they need them, right?
Wow.
So they probably got some beachfront property, on the Indian Ocean coast, and they probably sell, some condos or whatnot, on those properties. But the rest of Somalia is just a basket case.
Wow.
It's almost like Haiti, as a country. So all of these things, the point that I'm making is, if the Saudi Arabians were using their military capability that they've been buying with all of these weapons purchases, if they were using that military capability to help people, in the Middle East, to overcome, despots that have control over their countries, I could see that. I could see us, spending American money, to assist. But that's not what the Saudis are doing. The Saudis, they're getting all of these weapons and whatnot, and they only use the weapons to defend the Saudi interests. And they rarely have to defend Saudi interests because they got so many weapons that most countries in the Middle East won't even attempt to attack Saudi. When the last time you saw somebody attack Saudi Arabia?
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Since the British were over there, trying to take over, the Middle East to expand their, the British Empire and whatnot, you haven't seen anybody trying to conquer Saudi Arabia because they're so wealthy. They have so many, such a dense, military apparatus. I'm not even sure the Saudi Arabians have the ability to use that apparatus. The last time we saw the Saudi Arabians playing, with money on the table was when the Iraqis conquered Kuwait, and they went in and started stealing the Kuwaiti oil and stealing their ambulances and just the crazy stuff that Saddam Hussein was doing. The Saudi Arabian army fought along with the coalition that was organized by George Bush, fought, to defeat the Iraqis, right? And but so we saw that. We saw they had a largely African army.
Right.
When you saw the pictures of who it was actually the troops, fighting for the Saudi Arabians. They were largely Sudanese type people, right? So that's another story. We'll get into that another day. My core point here is that the Saudis are getting are buying all of these weapons and whatnot. But when we give foreign aid, to countries like Saudi Arabia, that money is being used largely to buy weapons that are manufactured in the United States. So essentially, we just have a lot of points of conflict around the world where we are giving people foreign aid who then in turn use the money of the foreign aid to buy weapons from weapons manufacturers. And who are the weapons manufacturers? They're American weapons manufacturers, right? Wow. So this is money that's coming out of American taxpayers' pockets. There are different loops, on how the money moves around, but it ultimately winds up going into the pockets of these American arms manufacturers, right? And it comes from the pockets of the American people. Right. And we need to understand that. I'm not saying that every decision to provide foreign aid, to people is wrong, or foreign aid that involves military hardware purchase is wrong. I'm just saying that we need to understand what's going on, and we should make conscious decisions about what we support and what we do not support. Right. I think that's where we have to go. So I think it was Ali Shahabi, who's a Saudi analyst for the New York Times. He insisted that the move that the Saudis made on reducing the amount of oil production was merely to keep the price of oil in an acceptable band. But this claim is unjustified. These production cuts will lead to unsustainably low oil inventories, and they will send the price of oil skyrocketing. This is what just as what happened with the COVID-19 situation, when you started having a disruption in the ability to get oil from where it's produced to where it's consumed, say in the United States, the people that were the ones that do the production and the transporting were the people that got sick. The people got sick, they can't work. If they can't work, they can't move the oil. If they can't move the oil, then you got a problem. You got a lot of demand for, you know, a need for oil, but you have a lower supply. So the price for the supply begins to go up. So the Saudi move can't be justified by the non-existent global recession that the Saudis tried to cite. The Saudis were saying that, well, we're trying to get in front of the recession that we think is going to occur. Why do they say it's going to occur? Because the largely Republicans in the United States kept claiming that we were on the verge of a recession. We're on the verge of a recession. So now you got people in other countries making policy decisions based on something that's being said by American politicians that isn't true. Do we look like we're going through a recession right now? Right? We're still generating 260,000 new jobs a month. You know, the job market continues to expand. See, the problem with our indices is that when unemployment goes up, the people who directly benefit, when unemployment goes down, the people that directly benefit from unemployment going down are the people that just got jobs. So if unemployment goes down by 1/10 of a percent, you're probably talking about something like, 1 million people, that got a job, this month. So that's good for that 1 million people. But if inflation goes up by 2%, that 2% affects 332 million Americans. So people react to inflation more than they react to unemployment, but the unemployment rate tells you that the economy must be doing well if we're continuing to expand the amount of opportunity that's available in this economy. So every OPEC member has been making massive profits recently, except Russia, because it's it is OPEC's least efficient producer. It costs Russia $46 a barrel to produce a barrel of oil. For the Saudi Arabians, it only costs $22 a barrel, and for Russia had to actually offer discounts on a barrel of oil, as much as $35 a barrel, in order to get people to even take the oil off their hands. To be clear, Saudi Arabia remains important to energy security and stability in the Middle East, but the country's support for Russia should spark a far-reaching view of the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia. That relationship, I think, is on shaky ground. Some propose extending the domestic antitrust laws to international commerce. Others are proposing that we revive a GOP initiative to withdraw U.S. troops from Saudi Arabia. Now, we say that, but when it came time to try to do that, it turns out that the GOP people really didn't want to do that at all. They were just saying that stuff, because they thought it would get them, headlines. The United States would rather have its own troops in Saudi Arabia rather than Russian or Chinese troops in Saudi Arabia. So to pause all military supplies, sales, and other weapons aid to Saudi Arabia would not be a wise move. The U.S. collaboration with the Saudi regime is more extensive than many realize, but it also gives the United States significant economic and security leverage with Saudi Arabia. Today, the country cannot, let me say it this way, the Saudi Arabians cannot substitute defense suppliers if they wanted to partner with, even if they wanted to partner with Russia or Iran or China, they couldn't easily do that because all of their systems are American systems. So because their systems are American systems, the people who have to repair the systems are American technicians, and the parts that you need to be able to repair their systems are parts that are made in America, not made in Russia or China or Iran. So the reality is that the Saudi Arabians would have what they refer to as interoperability with their existing weaponry, with the existing weaponry of those other countries. So perhaps even more important than the Saudis' reliance on U.S. arms is its reliance on U.S. companies to help build up the local defense industry through big ticket joint ventures, largely initiated in 2017 or in 2017, and have outsourced U.S. sensitive technology and U.S. jobs to Saudi Arabia without U.S. control. So this is what these people playing for money do. You know, when they get the money relationships going the way that they want them to go, they are more worried about stabilizing the money relationships rather than the political relationships that we need to meet the policy needs of the United States. So they've been actually placing advanced weaponry in the hands of the Saudi Arabians because they had the ability to buy. But those weapon systems are now no longer in the control of the United States. They're in the control of a nation that could be having the Russians come over there and, you know, sort of, I forget what the word that they use, but they sort of take a weapon system apart and then rebuild it again. So that's how they learn how that weapon system works, right? And that's going on right now. That just seems fairly dumb, you know, from my point of view. The Saudi can do little to respond if the United States were to withdraw its weapons sales to Saudi Arabia. They could do very little to respond to that legislation other than to come back to the table and renegotiate with the United States. Now, I say that because the Saudis would not be able to replace those American weapons without America.
Right.
But how do we know that the Saudis even care?
Right. Let me ask a question. Where does the Chinese fit in this? They make their own oil and weapons. Also,
they make
right?
their own weapons too, right? And of course, because their weapons are sourced there and they're maintained there, they're repaired there in China. They have a self-contained system. If they were to sell those weapons to Saudi Arabia, they would have to build an infrastructure in Saudi Arabia that would make their weapons usable for Saudi Arabia. That's really difficult to do. I mean, in terms of space, in terms of dollars, you know, in terms of time, you know, and so on, that would be very difficult, you know, for them to do. So that's likely not to happen. So I think the United States has more leverage over Saudi Arabia than we act like we have. And we have to start using that leverage because the amount of money that Americans are losing because of these increases in oil prices is just too much for us to allow to stand. So Russian playwright Anton Chekhov, he warned, just a little final quote, he said, "Knowledge is of no value unless you put it into practice." And perhaps the same is true about leverage. It is of no value unless the leverage is used. So we may have leverage with the Saudis. They're trying to use their leverage with us to increase oil prices. We can use our leverage with them to get them to hold back their increase or their decreases in oil production and make things a little bit easier for the rest of the world by using our control over their ability to maintain their defense superiority. So I appreciate everything that you all have been doing. We look forward to talking to you all on Friday here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY, and get well soon, James. We'll see you on Friday.
All right. 91.3 FM WBNY.
Girl, I'm not sentimental at all. Dreams of the gutter, they shudder both deaf and dumb. It's like lying in the shadows cast by kingdom come. And birds of a feather are tethered tightly to your thumb. Feasting like flies on the sins you crumb. So if you see your baby sister, tell her thanks a lot.